Hi, welcome to another exciting episode of the Andre the Beast Creighton Show. Another exciting show, and just like I always say, another exciting guest. Let me tell you where we're going today. Tennessee, Chattanooga, Nashville, Knoxville, whole 9 yards. We're covering the whole state. But we're going to go deeper than this. Imagine, if you will, with me, going to school to be a lawyer, and just imagine how long it takes to master that law degree. And then all of a sudden, in the midst, your whole mindset shifts. And then you get into something that most people would say, I've never thought about that. The movie industry, but not just any type of movie industry. How about owning and operating a complete movie theater? How do you transition? How does that beast mindset go from this to that? And at the end of the day, you're still as happy as ever. Let's welcome to the show all the way from Tennessee. I'm going to make sure I get this name right. Cat, Cata, Cav, Catvila. Did I get it right? Cavila?
Kavitha.
Kavitha. Very unique name. Reddy. First of all, before we get started, how in the heck did you get that beautiful name? Because I
My
never even heard it before.
well, my dad's from India, so the correct pronunciation would make it a lot more Indian sounding. So you may have heard it before, just not, the southern pronunciation.
Kavitha.
Mhm.
Beautiful name. Attorney Kavitha. Let me address it correctly. Attorney Kavitha. Before we get started, tell the viewers a little bit about who you are. You mentioned something that your father's from India.
My dad's from India. Yep, he came from India to go to the university. Actually, he started in Ohio and it was cold, so he ended up at the University of Tennessee. And just by happenstance and taking advantage of some opportunities that were available, he ended up in this tiny town that's between Knoxville and Chattanooga.
Mhm.
So he started in the medical field there, and the office that they operated out of, my mom worked in a separate office there. So they met here in this tiny town. So they have been here ever since, and they had me. So I grew up here in little tiny East Tennessee, and I went to college in Knoxville. I went to law school in Chicago, and then just ended up back here.
This may sound crazy as all I do it, but I just got to say it. You don't really go from Ohio. I don't know what part of Ohio, Cleveland, Cincinnati, to Tennessee for a warmer climate.
Compared to India, I think it would definitely be a warmer climate.
Okay. Um, this you've done something that's almost unheard of. Foregoing your law, family law, into, let's call it what it is, entertainment, the movie industry. What made you do that?
So, I do think that there are a lot of non-practicing attorneys in the world these days. Like, I don't know if it's just an oversaturation of that field or burnout. There's a lot of it's being a lawyer's high stress, and people come to you on the worst days of their lives, and it's a lot. There's a very high suicide rate amongst attorneys, a lot of substance abuse. It's a very high stress profession. So I don't think it's uncommon for someone with a law degree to jump into a different field or use their skill set in a different way. The movie industry is definitely very niche, and I know there are probably other attorneys here, but in the same way that my dad ended up in small town Tennessee, we kind of ended up in the theater business when we, I don't know, maybe going back into the 70s, there's always been two twin screen theaters that served our little tiny town and a drive-in. And over time, those two small theaters closed. I think the last one closed in 2013. My dad had been to exactly one movie in his life. And for some reason, when the other one closed, he felt there was a need in the community. We are very rural here. People tend to be very isolated. A lot of them don't get out. We're not going to the big city of Knoxville for stuff. So if you didn't have access to Knoxville or Cleveland, which is between us and Chattanooga, you weren't going to the movies. So there really was a need in the community. And my dad thought that you could just renovate an old building, turn it into another twin screen, and everything would be fine. But with the amount of content and movies produced these days, you can't really compete for first run films without at least 5 screens. So it turned into a much bigger operation. And the studios are these massive corporations, and you go through contracts with them. So dad paid for my law degree and was, you know, kind of taking it, not he's not taking advantage, he paid for it, so he's using my law degree to go through these contracts with the studios. And that's kind of how I got involved in the first place. I had no intention of being in a position of running a movie theater. I don't know that there may be some people who they've been in it their whole lives and that's what they think. I went to the movies. I knew a little bit more than my dad about the physical act of going into a movie theater. But as far as running a movie theater, I think you just hope for the best, like any business when you don't know what you're doing.
You brought up something. I can use myself for example. I knew nothing about what I'm doing now. Nothing. And people ask me this all the time. How did you get there? I don't know. I kind of like, it might have been something in my past life. I have no idea. But trial and error. Did I make mistakes along the way? Hell yeah.
Mhm.
Did I understand contracts? No, that's why you have lawyers.
Mhm.
You seem level headed.
I like to
I
think
know
so.
when your father brought this to your attention, you did the due diligence. You looked at everything. But what were some of your main concerns? Because you focus on the fact that, and I don't want the viewers to take this the wrong way. Sometimes when you're comfortable in a small town, your mindset is comfortable too. You're less likely to when you're comfortable, you don't really try to bring other things that can take you away from that comfortability.
Mhm.
How do you how does your father convince you, and how do you convince each other that this was the way to go? Because I'm pretty sure you came at him from a legal standpoint, going, you know what, we got to look at this, we got to look at
Yeah.
this, and like you said, and this happens in business, and I think people that's trying to get into business need to understand you have to be more prepared for the unexpected to happen than you can with, like you said, the brick and mortar.
Mhm.
So how did you talk to your dad? What were some of your concerns that you had to give to your dad, and what did he tell you?
So I don't think I've ever had a small town mentality. I don't know if that's because neither of my parents are originally from this small town. I mean, my dad's from a completely different country, so I don't know if, I mean, I can't consciously say that that was imparted on me as, a child, but I feel like I've always thought bigger. And, I look back at things that I did when I was a child. Like, I decided we should do a toy drive when I was in elementary school. And I remember going to our principal, and we had an amazing elementary school experience here because it is so rural. We go K through 8 in the same school. So you have a very nurturing environment. You get to know the staff and the principals over those years. So I was always doing stuff that didn't have a rule book or, a plan. I wasn't looking at the instructions and following somebody else's template. So I think I had that as an advantage. Going to law school was kind of that same way for me. There aren't lawyers in my family. I didn't really know lawyers, and I actually started school going for biology, so I kind of twisted that into law later in my undergrad. So I don't think it was a fear that was of, a lot of people have that fear of, I don't know what I'm doing, therefore I'm not going to. And when you graduate law school, there's this misconception that once you get out, you know how to do everything. And they don't teach you how to be a lawyer in law school. You're not trained like a doctor would be. You have to figure out the laws because every district or jurisdiction, everywhere that you're at, is going to have a different set of laws. So you have to figure out how the court operates in that particular jurisdiction. Do they file things by hand? Do you bring the court order with you? Those are all things you have to figure out. And if you're not someone who's willing to operate without knowing what's going on, I think that fear kind of can control you. So I had that going into this business. I was used to not knowing what I was doing. My dad, some of the bigger things that we went back and forth on were just the logistics of it. He didn't understand that people need butter on their popcorn, so he didn't know that we needed a butter machine. It was those little details that you wouldn't really think about. The soundproofing in the auditoriums, he had a vision for what he wanted in there versus what was more commonly used at the time. So we had a lot of arguments about that. The name of the building was actually something that was kind of a point of contention at one point. So kind of the more minor things you would not expect to be an argument. He didn't know any more about the business of movie theaters than I did. So it's not like one of us had the upper hand in that regard.
Was there moments, I'm pretty sure there were moments that you guys decided, why are we really doing this? Because, like you said, you walked in and now you got to deal with the actual movie people. We live in a digital age now. It's no longer the reels. You got to understand technology as well as you got the building. Now you got to understand the format of how this running, when it can be run, the logistics that go behind it. Like you say, even the soundproofing. When does enough be? When does the idea become almost a no go? Because now things are reality is starting to step in. This is when that beast mindset has to say, we gone this far, let's keep going, or we squash the bucket.
Mm-hmm. Honestly, I think for us being a small business, and this is probably true of most small businesses, you do everything. You are 6 departments. So in a normal corporation, you would have a support system, you would have people to delegate to. And there have been many times over the years where I look at my to-do list and I know I'm not going to get it all done. And with the movies changing weekly, our schedule, there's no opportunity to get ahead. You have to do the same things every single week because you find out on Monday what movies are playing on Friday. So that means as soon as I get that movie list, I am working towards the Friday to Thursday week. So you are constantly behind. And there's been many moments, especially when you deal with the public and their limited understanding of business, let alone the movie industry. So there's been several times where you are doing the absolute best that you can, and you're just getting hit with negativity from all sides. And everyone says don't take it personal, but at the end of the day, it's the policy that I am enforcing. And in many cases, I created that policy. So when the people are upset about it, it is personal. They're mad at me for saying, no, you cannot bring outside food into our building. So there's been a lot of times where you really don't get the feedback personally like you get the criticism.
That was my next question. Your mindset is definitely bigger than your environment, and that's pretty evident. But let's go here. What was, two-part question? What was the initial response for community leaders in the community with such a project? And then this is something I just got to ask. What are some of the biggest complaints that people have and that you have to deal with that come to movies outside of bringing in your own food? That could be, and I think people need to listen to this part, that could be a major liability for you and not for them.
So probably the biggest thing that I have been fighting to get people to understand is that, well, actually 2 things. The 2 biggest things are, one, the movie studios take the majority of our ticket sales. So if we have a $10 ticket and we give 75% of that to a studio, we have $2.50 to pay the 3 employees that we have, to cover the $4,000 electric bill, to cover insurance and all of the other operating costs. And I think a lot of people it seems so simple. Like if you charge less, people will buy more, but you have a finite amount of interest in each movie. So if you do not want to see a movie, I can give you 10 free tickets. You're not going to go watch that movie. It's not something that you can force people into. So you kind of have to operate as if, you're not going to have a full sellout every time, because in most cases, you're never going to have a sellout. So that is one of the bigger problems for people to understand. They feel like they're getting ripped off. And as a small business, we just want to be like, no, we're just trying to help this single father pay for his kids' diapers. And, we have people who are using this money for good. We're not out living these lavish lifestyles. And, your total may be $27, but of that, we may get $4. So that $4, even if I kept 100% of it, isn't going to even pay for my coffee at, the local coffee shop. So you battle that because you want people to understand you're not ripping them off. And we're here, but then you also have that internal struggle of, this is a business. So what would be the harm in us making a profit? Even though as a small business in the community, that's not our objective. We're here for the community. The other thing that really riles a lot of people up is that we don't choose the movies that we play. There are conversations that are had with the studios through our film booker. So she's the one who's kind of this intermediary who handles those negotiations. We get a phone call and it says, you're playing this, and this movie's ending, and we might get to show this in the future. So especially if people feel very strongly about a particular film, like the faith-based content, there was a faith-based movie that we did not play, and I became a Facebook target personally as not showing this movie. So it was a very frustrating experience.
I just had my first premiere of a faith-based movie, Street Angels, that was filmed here in beautiful Indianapolis, Indiana, producer Lamont Coleman. And I never really knew what a faith-based movie was. So let's go here with that.
Mm-hmm.
Why did you get such a flack from it?
The perception was that I personally was choosing to prevent the audience from having access to this message of God's word. And I was sitting back here reading this Facebook campaign against me, and I didn't have anything to do with it. I didn't even know this movie existed, because it was something that the faith-based filmmakers have a very connected grassroots type way of guerrilla marketing their films. They're not usually going through the main studios. So it wasn't something that was ever on our radar, because we deal with Disney and Fox and Sony and Lionsgate and all of the ones that you would expect. Mm-hmm. So these smaller films and, lesser known studios and distributors we were 3 weeks into opening, so we didn't even know those were options for us. And in a lot of cases, they're not. So I kept reading it in just total horror, because I just wanted to scream from the rooftop. It wasn't my choice. I went to a Catholic school. I don't know what you want from me. It was not me trying to prevent you from experiencing God's word in this film that ultimately the studios are making money off of. But it was interesting.
Let me go here and educate the viewers a little bit. As a owner, I get it. You got the contracts, but there may not be contracts with independent movie producers, as well as the faith base. So this is a business. So take me down that. Where if you can work out contracts with Fox, Disney, and such, you don't have a problem working out contracts with independent distributors as well, right?
Right. But the major studios, often in their master licensing agreements, will tell us that you have to have X number of showtimes of their new releases, or we have to give them prime showtimes. So
what does that mean, prime showtime?
So the popular showtimes. So the times that you are most likely to go to the movies. Friday night, Sunday afternoon after church.
Okay.
So if you made a film and you came to me and I was like, great, we're going to play it, I might not be able to put your movie Friday at 7 because if I'll use Disney as an example. If Disney knows that we have Toy Story booked and we're supposed to be playing it according to those licensing terms, if they check our showtimes and see that a showtime is missing, then we're in violation of that contract. So it would be less about the contract with you, the filmmaker, as an independent filmmaker, and more about how it can coexist with the larger studios. For bigger chains or theaters that have more than 5 screens, it's not as much of an issue because you have more rooms to play it in. So if you have 10 TVs in your house, you could play 10 different things at once. If you have 2, you could only play, 2 things. So it's kind of,
It's almost
yes,
like a radio station. You can get or television. You can, we make our money. I know I own the IMB's network, but the bottom line is I have prime times. And those times have already been purchased
mhm,
and stuff. But it's not saying I'm not going to turn your business away. But this
mhm,
is what we have to offer. So you're saying the same thing.
yes. So
Okay.
I can play it. It might be Sunday at noon. It
Right.
might not be Friday night, but if you have enough advance notice and enough of a following, then sometimes you have a little bit of wiggle room. But yeah, for the most part, we have what we have.
So for the listeners who was part of that campaign, you need to understand she's not saying that she didn't want to show your film.
Hmm.
Okay, she has contracts that she has to follow, but maybe somebody should have reached out to her and say, okay, what times do you have available
Hmm.
so we can
And
show you.
often, a lot of these smaller films have websites, and on them, it'll say, I want to watch this in my local theater. And it gives you the opportunity to put in your information. So you could say, I'm in Indiana. These are the theaters that are closest to me. I would be willing to drive here. And those pile up. So over 200 or 300 people doing it, that shows that studio that, hey, we might have a market for this in that area. Let's look into what our options are. So there's a lot of ways that the general consumer can control the narrative and what gets played.
A shift here. What's different between, as far as you're concerned, being a lawyer, which you still are, whether you're practicing or not, you're still a lawyer. What's
Mhm.
the mindset like now from going to here to going to here? Because I understand there's a high rate of suicide with lawyers. I couldn't imagine. My attorney Judy Hester. I can just imagine all the stuff that she went through with dealing with my cases and other cases. And as a client, we don't really look at that pressure that they have to go home with and still deal with their own family. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Now you've taken on a completely new operation. If you had to turn back the hands, which one would you forego? Would you have stuck with this one where you at now? Would you have stuck with the lawyer and why?
Honestly, I think there's a lot of similarity in the nature of the business. So, like I said, with lawyers, people come to you typically on the worst day of their lives and they're looking at you to fix it. And people come to the movie theater because they want to have a good time. But the thing I did not know about customer service, because I had never worked in a position with customer service, is that the customer comes to you as they are. So just because they come in with the intent to have a good time, that does not mean they did not get a flat tire on the way to the theater. It does not mean someone didn't cut them off in traffic. Maybe their kid got in trouble at school. So they may have had the worst day of their lives before they came. Maybe they met with their lawyer before they walked into the movie theater. So then you're dealing with a very finite period of time in which to make them have a better day. And often you're the punching bag because you might be that final straw that sets them off in their day. So I think you kind of have that same mentality of, okay, this person is having the worst experience of their life. How do we deal with it? The difference is with lawyers, legal cases drag on for longer periods of time versus this 3-hour experience they have at the movie theater. So Honestly, I think it's all about problem solving, and that's one of the things that appealed to me most about being an attorney is here's this horrible problem, how do we make it the best outcome for my client? And I approach customer service in the same way. So how do we make this experience the best for this particular customer? So for someone who is just trying to get away for a few hours and reset their mind, decompress, maybe they need just to go sit in a quiet theater and, or not quiet, I mean, theaters are loud, but, sit by themselves and enjoy, this time. Maybe that frazzled mom needs someone to help carry the kids' drinks and popcorn into the theater. We have a very specific approach to each customer that comes in.
How long have you guys been in business with the theater? How many years now?
11. We opened in February of 2015.
What has been the most difficult part of this operation? Is it learning the new technology from reels to the digital age? Like what was the most, and the reason I'm saying this because we're dealing also with your father. There's
Yep.
you know I have a dad who still is trying to understand how to use the phone.
Yeah. Mhm.
So I'm pretty sure now you're taking a blunt of the technical side. But what's been the most challenging part of being in this industry?
So for us, we were always digital. So I never had to retrofit into the film industry. We came in on the tail end of the digital transformation in the industry. So everything for us was always digital. So that was helpful in the sense that I learned digital. It is good because my dad very quickly realized that, hey, this is not my thing. I don't understand it. He works in the medical field with nuclear medicine, so he has a mobile PET CT scanner. So he's familiar with technology, probably a little more so than I was in the legal field. So he's not afraid of it. He probably shouldn't push the buttons though. So there's that. But I think the most difficult part for me is trying to find a boundary between me as a person and me as the theater. In a small town, I have no privacy, and people can't separate me as the person who works at a movie theater from the girl who's trying to buy a gallon of milk on her 15-minute break. They want to stop and ask you what's playing at the movies, and yes, there is that element of I'm very grateful that you are interested in my business, but also I don't know, and I can, people get very upset when you direct them to the website. So I get very, very overwhelmed with the lack of separation. You start to lose that sense of I am a person, and you realize people only talk to you because they want the theater information, or they think that they can get something beneficial out of the theater by knowing you. So that's been honestly the hardest part for me, is that I can't just exist.
How do you and thanks for sharing that because I think that's the topic people need to understand coming out of the legal field into something new. And just call it what it is. This is new. Even though you guys had success in it, it took a while. Now you're starting to understand a little bit of the pressure is off, but still at the end of the day, it's a business.
Mhm.
How do you keep your mental uh health in check? How do you keep that beast mindset and that mental health in check for yourself?
I am still in a constant battle on that one because the nature of the theater is that we have very, very busy times. So when everyone's going to the movies, Christmas, summer, holidays, and then there's these periods of weeks where we have 3 customers in the building. So I've tried to be more mindful about not letting those busy times make me feel like it's the end of the world. So yes, it is a constant pressure in a pressure cooker for 4 weeks, but I know that it ends because we've been open long enough for me to know that sometime in mid-January I have the opportunity to take a breath and kind of realize that, the world isn't this terrible place, and I do have the opportunity to kind of take a deep breath. I teach yoga, so that helps a lot. I have friends that are not from here and are in their own professional capacity, so they could care less what's playing at the movies in Athens, Tennessee. So I have people that I can talk to who aren't going to ask me about movie stuff. So that's incredibly helpful. The rest of it, I'm still trying to figure out what works. Vacation works, but if when you own your own business or work for a
There
family
is
business,
no vacation.
yeah, there's no vacation.
Yeah,
You try.
yeah, you try, but your mind is still like genetically hardwired to
Mhm,
problem solving. That's what it is. Because
mhm,
I tell people there's a big difference between working for somebody and running a company. You
mhm.
get a check, you put in 40 hours, you got 2 days off. When you own a business, there is no day off.
No.
You're working to make a check.
And movie theaters are open weird hours.
Yeah.
So, my friends have had to understand that, my phone is with me. And I hate to be that person that has their phone at dinner. But, last night, for example, I had just gotten out of the shower. My hair was still wet and there was a projector that crashed. So I'm sitting in my bathroom floor with my laptop and the phone trying to, troubleshoot on a Saturday night, a projector going down. That's just, reality.
How
And
did
I
you?
think
How did you? How did you? That's curious. You brought this up. How did you take care of that?
I
They moved
started
everybody to another movie theater.
it depends on what's going on, how we handle it. If there is an empty theater, sometimes we do move people. This particular one, I was not able to immediately identify what the problem was, and we have a tech who he's actually in Kentucky. So I was able to reach him rather quickly. So I was kind of playing middleman between him and our staff on site. And we're able to remote into a lot of it since it is digital. A lot of it's just a big computer. So we were able to do that. And it was in the last 20 minutes of this movie. So luckily we were able to get it back up and we just kind of had to troubleshoot the next set, which should have started at the time that we got everything back up. So we just kind of had to placate those who were waiting for their movie and it all worked out. Luckily, this was I'm going to say relatively minor situation in that we were able to fix it in the same night.
I'm gonna wrap up with like two more questions, at least one more question. You said something about your dad. Kind of was like, "I'm putting it all in your hands," and kind of like stepped completely back. A lot of times we look at. Did you look at your dad and go, "Really?"
No, I said thank you because there were times when we first opened that he had a very specific idea of what should be going on, but he wasn't there day to day. So and he still does it. He comes in and he'll get mad about there's a bird's nest over our front door right now. And he is so fixated because these birds are so mad at him. And yes, we do not want to clean up the bird droppings every 5 minutes, but we also don't want to break down this nest with baby birds in it. So,
Mm.
he's hung up on this bird nest situation and we just kind of have to roll with whatever he gets hung up on in that particular time frame and just roll with it. But, he has very strong opinions when he has an opinion on something. So I've just kind of I've been very fortunate in that he stopped trying to micromanage what he couldn't do. The first few months were rough. He would fire me every couple of weeks and I would send him a list of, okay, here are the 400 things that we have to get done by tomorrow in order for us to have movies this
Yeah.
week. So good luck. And I think he realized, okay, I don't know how to do this.
My last question: what should the viewers get out of this? I already know the beast mindset is there, but when I hear your story, two part. Let me go here before you answer that. Are you happy where you at now?
Yes, I think it's the perfect position to be in. I get to do all of the jobs that I'm not qualified for. I don't have one role that I get tired of. So if today I don't want to do social media, there won't be a TikTok posted. And no one's going to get mad at me because I didn't post a TikTok. But then tomorrow I might get to be a lawyer and draft something and then I'm running payroll on Wednesday. So yes, I don't if I had to go out in the real world and get a job, even as an attorney, I would have to stay in my lane and be whatever that role expected me to be. And I can do whatever I want here.
What should the viewers get out of this episode? What's your message?
I think compassion towards business and understanding that we're not out to make your life harder, that in most cases, businesses want to do what's best for our customers and we want them to have a good time with us.
Right.
So maybe reframing how you look at your experiences in the world. There's so much negativity everywhere, and social media gives us the opportunity to say what we want without a filter, and realizing that a lot of businesses are real people, and maybe taking some time to understand how those businesses operate, and also flexibility. You think you have a path set, and then it's not the end of the world when that shifts into something else.
I like that. How can the viewers reach out and know more about your movie theater and what's playing?
Yeah. So showtimes are most easily accessible on our website, which is athensmoviepalace.com. Pretty much everything is there: pricing, private rentals. If you ever want to just watch a movie by yourself with your friends, most theaters offer private rentals. So you can find that stuff on our website. We also are really active on social media. We have recently started using TikTok more so. We had the University of Tennessee baseball team in last summer for an event, and I started using TikTok more. But Facebook and Instagram as well, we're Athens Movie Palace on those.
Wow. I'm trying to pronounce your name again.
Let's do it.
Kathy V. Lee.
Kavitha.
Kavitha.
Mm-hmm.
Almost like Tabitha. You know, it'd be easy just to say Tabitha and just say, drop some words off her.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much for coming on the show and really educating us about transformation at its finest, and to let people know that, when you do have a business, realize that somebody is running the business, and saying unnecessary things on social media doesn't make you shine. It actually dims your light. So put yourself in somebody else's shoes before you write hate comments about something that you don't understand. It's a business. They're trying to help you out. Put yourself in their shoes before you go to social media and do the things that can harm you and harm others and start that wave of madness and stuff. So thank you so much for coming on the show. Wish you the greatest of luck in the future, which I know you're going to have. Ladies and gentlemen, make sure you subscribe, click that button. All it takes is one click to make a difference in your life or change somebody else's. This has been another, and I do mean another, exciting episode of the Andre the Beast Creighton Show.